So why is the Yasukuni Shrine such a thorn in diplomacy with Japan's neighbors? To talk about that, we're going to hear insights from our studio guests. Mr. Yang Xiyu joining us here. He's a senior fellow of the China Institute of International Studies. Welcome. And also we're joined by Mr. Yoichi Shimatsu, who used to be an editor of Japan Times. Gentlemen, welcome to World Inside. So let's first of all put things into perspective. What exactly does the Yasukuni Shrine stand for?
Well, for Chinese, that contains terrible and sad memories of Chinese people, simply because in that shrine, some Class A war criminal that made a huge damages on China and other Asian countries, that was put there for being respected. So that shrine, that position cannot be accepted by Chinese people and other Asian people at all. But Japanese politicians keep going there to show their respects. That's really challenge our, not only the morality, but also our national sentiments, our national dignity, our history, and in short, challenge the standards of the international rules and the law.
And every visit to the Yasukuni Shrine by Japanese politicians, lawmakers, outrages neighboring countries like China and South Korea. So why do Japanese politicians keep going to the shrine? What exactly does it mean for the Japanese?
Well, it's controversial in Japan also, but the shrine, you have to understand, essentially, I hate to say this because I don't want to, insult any of the dead or relatives, but it does cater to certain of our underground economy. For example, we had problems with the Appa Hotel, promoting war literature, the drinking districts, the red light districts, the porno industry, and so on. Our black industries have this false sense of patriotism, like camp followers of the army. So to get their support, you have to make these patriotic moves, and then they'll give you money.
Are politicians going just because they want to, gather support from the voters, or is it more than a belief of Japan's military past?
I think it's mainly to get a very kind of dark support from organized crime and these darker industries, which have to promote false patriotism. The average citizen does not go there. It's not particularly important to people. And certainly the war criminal issue is sensitive to many of the Japanese who felt that they suffered in the war too. And then these people, these Class A war criminals, misled the nation into a losing war.
And in recent years, Japanese Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has been trying to avoid visiting the shrine, but instead he's sending ritual offerings to the Yasukuni. So what is the difference between going in person and sending a ritual offering? Does that really make a difference at all?
Well, yes, there are indeed a difference between the two you mentioned, especially as a person positioned as a prime minister, visit in person or send something to show his attitude, indicate some sophisticated difference, but in nature, no difference. Say, show respect. That's the same. Say, no matter you send something to show your respect or go there in person to show your respect, that's the same. The problem for the prime minister is, on one hand, he let the government want to maintain the normal relations with the neighboring countries like China and South Korea. But on the other hand, he keep sending the so-called respect to there that contains some Class A criminals. So that cannot be acceptable for the China or South Korea. So whenever he do something about that, no matter it's sending something or go there in person, that always trigger crisis or problems in the individual bilateral relations. But that's not the problem, the whole problem. The whole problem is with the keep going visit there to maintain his wrong position and understanding about history. I'm afraid Japan will repeat the wrong way they used to do. Just like Prime Minister, the former British Prime Minister Churchill said, those who fail to learn from history are doomed to repeat it. So that's the root of our concern about they keep doing that thing.
Well, actually, Japan and especially Prime Minister Shinzo Abe had in fact many chances to express his apology, but he's always avoided saying that, probably using words like deep remorse. That's been used by his, of course, predecessors. So do you see that there's a difference in nature of sending ritual offering to the shrine and paying a visit by himself?
Well, he did pay one visit there as Prime Minister,
Only once
I believe, in his first term,
yeah.
But that was a very strong signal. And since then, he's had many chances to apologize for the war, as urged upon him by the Emperor of Japan, by other prime ministers, and not only to Asia. He actually went to Pearl Harbor recently and refused to apologize, which is unthinkable. That's what put America into World War II. It was basically an undeclared war because the declaration didn't get delivered on time. So this man basically believes Japan was right to launch World War II, was right to occupy China, and by his support for an offensive naval operation, Japanese destroyers are joining this flotilla off the Sea of Japan, off the Korean coast. He's asserting that Japanese colonialism over North Korea was historically a good thing. Now, of course, I think nearly 99.99% of Korean people would disagree with that, and most of the Japanese people would. In fact, there was a Mainichi newspaper poll 2 days ago. 67% of those polled, of the Japanese people, do not support any military moves, much less military solution to the North Korean crisis. Only 33% said we should do a little bit of military pressure. So this was a major defeat for him. He's been trying to shift the public attitude back to the old fascist thinking. The Japanese people are resisting, but he's just trying to override that with de facto moves.
Well, since you mentioned rising tensions on the Korean Peninsula, I want to ask you this, Mr. Yang. Is Prime Minister Shinzo Abe trying to use rising tensions, even military confrontation on the Korean Peninsula as a way to push forward his own version of the pacifist constitutions, his attempts to revise the constitution and to increase or strengthen Japan's militarism?
Yes, actually, in my observation in recent days, Prime Minister Abe has been a single leader in this region who is eager to see the continued escalation of tensions. Why is that?
Why is the rising escalation of tensions
simply because
to his advantage?
The more tensions there, the more excuses or more reasons for his administration to increase their military-oriented efforts, domestic. For example, they have revised the related legislations, got the so-called right to selective collective security. That means Japan have the right to send their military forces onto anywhere if U.S. or other allied nation was attacked.
It really gives the Japanese military power.
So the more, in short, the more tensions, the more reasons for the right wings to do militarily, to re-militarize the Japanese forces and the Japanese even industries.
Now, what are the risks if Japan continues to push forward this militarism and using or taking advantage of rising tensions on the Korean Peninsula to, push forward his own agenda?
Well, despite the fact that he ignores the lessons of his history, he's well versed in history and how Japan used very provocative incidents, false flag attacks, like against the South Manchurian Railroad, to launch wars. Wars are launched through action, not through ideals, principles, or diplomacy. It's through these creating situations where an incident can come up, an incident that may even be triggered by the Japanese. They could sink one of their own ships and so on. So this is the pattern we're looking at that's emerging. He's going back to the bad old ways. And as you said about the military buildup, they've tested the F-35 on the helicopter carriers, which are not supposed to have offensive aircraft on there. They've already done tests with a American plane that can land on there, vertically. They're trying to develop it into troop carriers for helicopters, not helicopters, but the V-22 is sort of helicopter plane, the Osprey, that can act as a plane.
Right.
So basically, he is trying to build an old-style Imperial Japanese Navy again, which is very frightening because this is what got us into Pearl Harbor, started the wars all over Asia from from Manchuria, from northern China down to India, to Myanmar. So this is and he's building the same sort of alliances too and preparing conditions. He's been one thing we have to remember: Shinzo Abe was prime minister in his first term in 2007. It's been 10 years, a decade, the Abe decade, and he's very nearly complete with all the preparations now, and he is launching. We should be very clear, he's launching.
So if Prime Minister Abe continues on this path, is there any chances that Japan is going to, come to better terms with its neighbors, China and South Korea?
Well, let me put it by this way. Now, Japan has been put by the Abe administration at a crossroad. Say, continue the previous pacifist direction or something new, the new direction. Obviously, Abe wants Japan to go a new direction. At least the so-called new direction for Japan contains a huge uncertainties, not only for Japan, but also for the region. What kind of new Japan will be for Asia? So if Japan is remilitarized, I think this region will, will witness and experience a lot of uncertainties and conflicts, both politically and even militarily. And the most dangerous thing is the top priority for Abe in his term lies in the revision of the pacifist constitution. If that constitution is revised, especially the Article 9, then we will see a totally brand new Japan, actually the old Japan. Say, before 1945, Japan commanded the right to launch war towards wherever they want. But after 45, and such a right was prohibited. Now the right is going to be recovered or restored. So based on the current wrong historical understandings of Japan politicians, and if they believe what they did before 1945 was right, then when they regain the previous right, you can imagine what will happen, what will be repeated by the politician guided the Japan guided by the politicians.
And there are plenty of signs that it seems that Prime Minister Shinzo Abe is on the path to repeat history. And some worrying signs that we're seeing, Abe's administration has recently approved the use of Adolf Hitler's autobiography, My Struggle, as teaching material in schools. How concerned are you about that?
Well, it is a book. It represents the point of view. People should study it to understand how Germany got involved, launched World War II. But that's not how it's going to be used. It's going to be used as to adulate Hitler, show him to be a great man, and one we should emulate today, who's going to set a new standard for the world, especially for Europe. It's directed at Europe because Abe's vision is, again, this greater East Asia prosperity linked with fascist movements in Europe. This is a global move with jihadists in the Middle East, with these far rightists in India. So he has a global vision of a very dark, grim world, which is directed against China, Russia, and ultimately against the United States. Tragically, Donald Trump team does not have any Asian experts. They're allowing Shinzo Abe to lead them. As you see, this sort of strange friendship in which Abe's been able to take the lead by influencing Trump's team. And he's leading them like the Pied Piper down the merry path, which will end in, once again, a betrayal of the United States and destruction of the U.S.
So very briefly, Mr. Yang, will Prime Minister Abe be gathering enough support from the Trump administration on his effort to try to remilitarize Japan? Will President Trump give him what he wants?
On one hand, the Trump administration will certainly allow Abe to do what he wants, but partially, and meanwhile give Abe something he wants, but also partially, U.S. will never ever allow Japan to develop the long-distance delivery capabilities, simply because Japan, in history, Japan is the single country that strike on U.S. land, and vice versa, U.S. right? So what I want to say is, with the declining of U.S. power in Asia Pacific, U.S. really need the so-called assistant. And Japan as assistant for the United States, U.S. keeps saying, you, Japan, should play in greater roles. So for playing greater roles, Japan should have greater military capabilities. But the limits of the military capability lies in no strategic delivery capabilities onto even Hawaii or Guam. So within this limited scope, Japan can do whatever Japan wants. So that is the picture U.S. under Trump, even under the following presidents, will allow and give Japan to do.
And certainly this is a very delicate balance to keep. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your insight on this. We really appreciate it.